When you approach a script, what is your first thing that you do?
I read it a lot. There's no value in immediately drawing up images. Your instinct is always your best marker. And the character's emotional base, it's always the starting point. And that then informs color, it informs texture, and slowly builds like that.
What was your jumping off point to begin the arc of the character?
You know, go in a very linear way and to find how we can make them look so young. And then, you know, 4 years, I mean, it's quite a, you know, quite a big part of a young person's life. 4 years can be very transformative. Luckily, Daisy looked so young. So that really helped, I think, with her, you know, evolution, that she began by looking very childlike, very innocent. And obviously with hair and makeup playing a huge part in that.
What about the pictures of them in their school uniforms? Is that an actual school uniform?
We cobbled it together from bits of the real school that we used, but the decision to use grey was, you know, that was a definite decision because her home was going to be this, you know, grey palette. Her mother's world is very grey. The somber life that they have, you know, it's just, there's something heavy in the grey, and against that landscape when they, you know, they go to this deserted house that's very a concrete jungle. We decided on colors and tones for the school, almost like everybody's the same, yet they're not. She is not like the other girls, and Connell probably stands above the other boys in just very, very simple understated clothes, but there's definitely two very unusual, you know, people there in this ordinary town. So we had to do all this before we started shooting because the actors, we barely saw them for 5 minutes when we were shooting. So all this had to be thought out at the beginning. The early stuff for Daisy, or for Marianne, was actually some of the hardest to find initially. We didn't want her to look like, you know, she'd been thinking about it too much, and she was, you know, studied in any kind of fashion sense. We knew maybe what direction we were going to go later. That was easier to find, the Trinity stuff. To find something that was innocent, and also to evoke some sense of yearning for love, and, you know, like we exposed this vulnerability, exposing her neck and her shoulders. This is the first time we see him since he's left school in Trinity. So layering is very important on several levels. Everything that he had there, he probably had at home, except the hoodie. He's not very comfortable in his skin. He doesn't fit in. We just didn't want to change him too much the first time we see him. He's very hesitant to move forward. We have to just remember that he's where he's from, and he doesn't lose that, and he doesn't want to change that. I think they were Levi's. We just went very classic, very simple. And grey, yeah, very muted, the tone of it. Again, not a label. The first time we see her in Trinity, it was a 1930s shirt, silk 30s blouse, and yeah, culottes that were, you know, we'd made them, and they were just different, and with long white boots and this cord jacket, I think, or a velour jacket. It just had a bit of confidence. Yeah, and the earring was kind of cobbled together from broken earrings, actually. A very different Marianne from what we've just seen. And she's got her own sense of style going on. And it's a bit thrift shop, you know, there's nothing designer label, and she's confident and comfortable.
At the pool, I love the fact that you chose a one piece.
To keep it classic, I didn't want to have a color in that particular point. It felt right that she would be in black. That was an instinctive choice. Just a really classic, simple shape. And I think all the other girls around her are very vibrant and probably more fashiony. she's hosting a dinner party in her flat. This is her dressing up, which is very classic. I put a black bow on it, thinking bit of Chanel. Again, it was an old dress that we found. We had to do a lot of work on it. I think it had a cape or something, and we had to take it apart. And it wasn't the easiest thing to work with, but it was chosen because of the color. The kitchen had a beautiful yellow ochre wall, and I think the director wanted something, because we were going to be looking at her against this wall. So whatever it was going to be we went for that color.
What about him? He's wearing runners, jeans, and a very simple jacket.
So he's just been beaten up. So he's been out celebrating the same evening in a very different way, and he's been mugged, and he comes into her house all bloody, and just the way he's dressed in this t-shirt, there's a contrast then to who else is at the table. These preppy rich kids, the boys, how they dress and their confidence. And Connell, I think you see the chain in the book. That's where she notices the chain on him again.
Were you under pressure to create the chain? Because my goodness, so much attention has been focused on that.
It's just so funny because we never thought about it at all. It was in the book, it was there, it was something Paul wanted. Okay, put it on him. That's it. We don't have to think about that. And he never lost it. He never took it off. So we actually it didn't occur to us that this would be anything people would even talk about. So it's been quite funny. They're on holiday. It's like nobody's thinking about what am I wearing today. It's hot, really, really simple. And then I think we repeat that, the little skirt, I think we repeat that. It's just to show that this is not, they're very comfortable with each other. This is effortless. Color is something that I've repeated quite a lot in different, I think people do have a color that is comfortable on them, and they wear it again and again in different forms. So yellow seemed to be something like that for Marianne.
It's very clean, very distinctive.
Connell does not think about fashion, and I think he probably would have worn the football shorts the whole holiday, but he knew that maybe he had to smarten up. Now, interestingly, that the whole tone of that scene was an accident. When they arrive in Italy, it's pretty much one day, this whole thing. So when they arrive, we start with when he sees her at the clothesline, and she's wearing this little shift dress. In the book, he sees her as an angel. So that was the closest little shape we found, and I think Hetty, the director, kind of fell in love with that as, yeah, this is our angel at the clothesline. And it had a bit of 60s Catherine Deneuve, and very, very simple, effortless. The accident again in the kitchen, the tiles. Now, we didn't know the tiles were going to look like, the tiles matched her dress. It was extraordinary in this old farmhouse in Italy. So yeah, things like that make us very happy. The intention was that we would continue with that palette through the square, and they had gone on a recce, I think, just a few days before, and the director said, oh my goodness, the square, it's just so white, blinding. If we put them in light clothes, they're just going to just wash out. So we need to look at something dark, something black. And, so we went looking at black dresses. It's a sundress. It's very simple, a very cheap little dress. Again, not labeled, secondhand. Vintage. We had to do some work on it. It had a heavy lining we had to cut out of it so that you could cycle on the bike. Then he, I think, had to be darker. He might have been wearing lighter colors earlier. So thought, okay, we just have to put, they've had a shower, they've gone cycling in these darker clothes. So it's just, these accidents do happen that lead you down different paths. When you put Marianne in the pub, it's probably not particularly Marianne, it's kind of sparkly celebration, Christmas, but then you see the girls that have stayed at home, and you realize, gosh, they haven't changed, and she really has moved on. So her look is a more modern party dress, and they're still wearing almost what they wore on the night out when they were 17. You know, they're kind of frozen in time or something. That was something we loved, that shape on Daisy. She wears it to the celebration party for Connell's magazine. So it was a very elegant piece. And then we used it again. I think she meets him in the street for coffee. I think we made it, or yeah.
What was the message you were sending there? Because it's very fitted, it's very sophisticated.
As she wears it with Jamie, she's not in a good place. So it was something like the neck, and you know, there was some suggestion of being restrained, and it creates a boxy shape.
How much dialogue do you have with the actors about comfort, and do they ever say to you, oh no, I hate that, and you have to say, well, it's for the character?
I wouldn't be so foolish as to say that because it's a very long job and you don't want to upset anybody. It's a constant dialogue every day. We'd very quickly pick up on if something wasn't comfortable or they didn't like it. I'd know straight away if they didn't like something.
Anything that either of them asked for in particular, or you incorporated at their request?
The GAA was very important to Paul, and I do remember he wanted to wear those shorts arriving in Italy, and I have to say I was a little unsure, and the director Hetty was English. She was very unsure, and Paul said this is absolutely right, he would definitely wear these on holidays. So you know, there's things like that, but he knew more about GAA than we did.
How much did the book influence your choices?
Hugely, because you know, Sally is a very she writes very much on the interior and the minds, and so you could really feel a connection emotionally to the characters. And absolutely, when I look back on the book now, I think, gosh, the dialogue, the dialogue was the script. So we reference the book constantly in everything.
Wonderful. It's been so joyful to talk with you and get a little bit of insight into the challenges of creating simplicity. Thank you so much for your time.